And welcome back. As we continue working with our new game, let's get ready to actually start introducing a little bit of animation work. And in order to do this, we're actually going to approach this a little differently than we might have done in the past. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go up into Window here, and I'm going to choose Sequencing, and I'm going to bring up the timeline. Now this timeline, of course, is just a way to begin a timeline with this player, and we can, of course, dock this wherever we think it's most appropriate. I'm actually going to move this down here next to my console just to get started. And of course, I can resize this as I need to do. If I start saying, like, I need some more room to work around with things, I can do that. Now, it might be tempting to just go ahead and click Create here, because it does say, hey, to begin create a new timeline with player, go ahead and click this button. But we don't want to do it that way. Instead, we want to set it up so we're basically having a bunch of different things set up in here where we can actually manipulate them. So what I'm going to do first is create in here in my hierarchy a timeline here that is, I'm going to just choose create empty, and I'm going to call this my master timeline, because that's going to basically keep track of all the different timelines that I have. Then in my assets folder here, I'm going to go ahead and create an empty here. Let's go create a new folder and just call this timelines. And I'm doing this plural because I might have more than one that I end up creating, and this is just a good way to keep everything organized. And so now let's go back over to timeline here, and we need to select a game object. So what do we want? Well, we want our master timeline. And so it says to begin a new timeline with master timeline, create a director. All right, cool. Now we're good to go ahead and click create. So let's go ahead and do that. It's going to ask me to go ahead and save this. So let's go to my timelines here, and I'm going to just go ahead and keep that file name, mastertimeline.playable, and click save. And you can see now I have a new view here that I can actually start creating a timeline for my animations. Now, what we want our animation to do is to basically dictate the movement of the player here. And so let's just go ahead and get started by creating this little plus button here. It allows us to add new tracks. And you can see we have a bunch of different options. What we are going to want to do here is make an animation track. And we're going to choose animation because this is basically going to allow us to dictate where the player is, what they're kind of doing, even as there's other things going on such as enemies and stuff like that. Because basically we want this player to move along basically a set path as we are flying through the game here. Now you notice it does say none in here in the little animator. Now this is where we can actually point back to what are the things that we want to animate. So I'm going to go grab my player object from up here, drag it on in. It's then going to give me a prompt that says, hey, create animator on player or cancel. Well, I want an animator on the player because that's the thing that I want to have control over. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. You'll see I now have a player animator in here. So yes, our scene is coming together. Now, before we get into any of the crazy things that we're going to need to do here, I am going to go ahead and make a small tweak here. You can see right now our numbers on this timeline are going 30, 60, 90, 120, etc. These are frames. And if we are using something where frames are going to be dictating, where it basically we're saying, hey, after this many frames of animation, this is going to happen, this is a great way to do it. However, I'm going to go ahead and change this over to seconds. And so this is going to be something maybe a little bit more familiar for us to kind of operate in. You can see here, it's a half second, it's a full second, etc. So I can squeeze that time over. You can see it starts at 0.00, and it goes 0.50, 1.0, etc. And I can, of course, zoom that in and out to kind of get different views. But that's just a quick way for you to see like how this timeline is actually set up and how we can actually change some of those different settings. Now, let's get animating. And the way we're going to do this is through the perspective of this little record button right here. So if we go ahead and hit start recording, you can see it now says recording. Now nothing's actually happening quite yet because I haven't actually done anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go click on my player here. And of course this is our world view over here. We can of course see where everything's all set up here. We can have all that control. But nothing is of course on the timeline until I come over here to my transform. And what I want to do is actually come in here and right click on the position, and you can see I have an option that says add key. And what that's going to do is add a keyframe to this animation timeline that basically says, here's the initial position of the player. Now, if I later say, I don't like the player here, I want to maybe move them up just a little bit. For example, maybe I want them to be here. All right, well, I can do that. I can just go right here, come to right click on position and change it to update key. And that would then change that starting position of the player. Same thing if I decided, hey, I want to change the angle where the player is or anything like that. Same thing, you're going to right click and then update the key, because that keyframe is not only recording the position, but also recording things such as rotation and scale and all that other piece there. And you can see particular position and rotation are the things that are being recorded. Because if you look at the color of the boxes here, see the kind of almost have this like red color here on my screen, that just simply means that those values have been snapshotted by the game for this particular keyframe. Now, let's actually go through and make a couple animations here just to kind of see how this works. So I'm going to go ahead and jump up to 1 second here, so 1.0. I can also type the number right in here, which would allow me to jump to that number. And all I'm going to do is here in my game window is I'm going to go ahead and maybe have the player move up just a little bit more. So I'm just going to have them go up to kind of signify maybe they're taking off. And then let's go ahead and jump maybe to the 3 second mark. I'm actually just going to type 3 in here now. And that'll jump that to the position 3.0 here. And let's go ahead now and have the player, let's say, move forward just a little bit. So I'm going to grab my axis here and have the player maybe just move forward a little bit. And so, well, that looks pretty good. Let's just go ahead and test this now real quick just to see what happens. So right here you'll see there's a play button. This is an option to preview. So if I go ahead and press play, you see how the ship starts off by taking up into the air a little bit and then flies forward. Now, of course, I could adjust a lot of this around. So, for example, if I want the player to be at a farther position here at number 3, maybe I want them further out here. If I go ahead and do that, and then let's go ahead and save this real quick and press play again. You can see how that animation has now changed to update to that new position. And of course, if I were to pull this back, maybe I don't want them going that far. Maybe I want to go here. Again, I can right click, update the key. And if I go ahead and play that animation, you can see that it now stops at that current position where I had them. Oh, it looks like I actually had created a small keyframe jump right in here. So let me actually just go in here. I can actually delete out that animation completely if I want, or I can just simply create a new one. So let me just go back to my timelines. I'm just going to go ahead and recreate that. Oh, I actually created that on the player. I'm getting a little too zealous here. That's okay. Let me go back to the master timeline here. So let me just go ahead. I'm going to point it to the master timeline playable. And then now we can just go ahead and create our animation track. There it is. Point that back to the player. And I'm going to go ahead and reset this back to position 0. I'm going to make sure I'm a little bit more careful here at what I'm actually controlling because I was getting a little too crazy here. So I'm going to go ahead and tap record, click on my player. Let's go ahead and add that first keyframe there just so that's in there. I'm going to use the numerical values here just so I'm much more precise. Let's go ahead and have that player. I'm going to grab the player, maybe have them fly up just a little bit. And let's go to position 3. And again, I'm going to have them scooch forward. So made that mistake, but that's okay. It's a good way to show you how easy it is to fix that. If I need to undo something now, so let's just say I added a keyframe in here and I didn't want that, I can actually just right click and remove key, and you'll see it takes that keyframe out of there. So that's another quick way to clean that up. If you saw when I deleted this out here, remove the animator completely. So that was something I just wanted to show you because again, if you do this, it's not the end of the world. It is possible to bring these things back. I am going to, of course, update the player here just so that we have that. And let's go ahead and press play one more time just to see that animation in action. All right, so the next thing I'm going to want to do is introduce a little bit of rotation. Because up to this point, we have a lift, we have motion forward. So those, of course, are pretty easy things to do because that's just controlling position. But what about rotation? So let's go ahead and jump to the 5 second mark here. And at this point, I probably want my player to maybe start exploring movement. Actually, I'm going to go back to 3 just for a second here. Let's go back to 3. And I'm actually going to just scooch that up just a little bit more so we get a little closer to that hillside here. And maybe I want him to, as I approach this hillside, maybe I'm going to want to have the player make a choice here, right? I'm going to need to have them rotate. So I don't want to go that way. I'm going to want to go to the right here. So let's go ahead and make that choice for the player by having them turn. And so here's, of course, my player. I'm going to want to do this in a way where I can have the ship move in such a direction. So if we jump over again to frame number 5, this is where we're going to want that to be. We can, of course, drag this into the position that we want, and we can adjust the rotational values as we want to. So I could do like a manual one. So let me just show that real quick here. So if I were to drag this over, maybe have it move forward just a little bit, maybe up a little more. If I want this turned, I could, of course, introduce rotation here. So, for example, if I have this Y rotational value here, I, of course, can rotate the player in the direction I want. So let's just say I'm going to have them go to, let's do like a 90-degree turn here. I'm just going to go tight about 90 degrees. There we go. So now they're over here. So they're making a pretty sharp bank. Let me just move them forward also just a little bit. If I were to go ahead and play this as it is, one of the things you'll notice though when I start is that the player did not start in a way that we want, because you notice they're taking off and they're turning right away. And that's because we're missing a rotation frame here. So this rotation that we originally were, which was, I believe, 0, is when we get to this point, now at 90. And that's an important thing to keep in mind here, is that when we introduce rotational values, they may end up inadvertently changing certain things. So, but now, if I have that keyframe in there, I can do that. Boom, there's the player. Now, this again is just one way to do this. You can also do this with a different way. Now, if you don't want to do this, the way to do this that we handle up here is we have game object and we have align with view. So let's just say for a minute, I'm going to, let's say, jump ahead to 7 seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the player. I'm going to hit F here to kind of zoom in on that so I'm a little more centered. And let's go ahead and say, you know, I really want this to be maybe a little further down the line here. I'm going to want the player to end up in a position where I'm going to be further along. And remember, you can use like your WASD keys and stuff like that to kind of move around this world. So I'm going to stay on the player here just for a second. And let's just go ahead and try to get ourselves into a position where we know that this player is going to be in a way to do that. And once we have the thing we want to do this and do align with view. That will do it. I think I'm going for now, just keep in with the manual adjustments, and I can fine tune that way. But there's just another option that you have should you choose to do so. But I'm going to, again, keep with this the manual adjustments for now. This is really helpful. The line view is if you want that first-person view to kind of really see where things are going to be. I'm going to stick with this, though, and I can, again, fine-tune this because I can adjust this. So for me, I want to get a little bit more angle on there. I can do so, and then I can easily just update that key there. Of course, now I've created a key here at the 7th frame, which means I'm flying and then I'm not moving. So I might want to actually have this individual player object here maybe move forward a little bit here too. So I'm going to have them zoop along here, and let me just update that keyframe real quick here. And so let's just see how our animations come together. So let me just go back to the very beginning. Press play. We're lifting up. We're flying forward. We're turning. And there we go, we're flying off. Okay, cool. So that is coming together real nice. All right, and so now we, of course, have up to 7 seconds of animation here. What I want you to do is go ahead and modify this for your own game. So, for example, I jump to frame 10. I may want to say, you know, I'm getting pretty far along here, right? I need to go ahead and make it so that way this player is even further along. So here I am using the WASD keys to kind of fly along. And, you know, I want to say, oh, this player's coming up in this mountain here. I'm going to fly him up to its edge here. We're going to have to make a decision here. All right. And now one thing to keep in mind that as I've been doing this, all right, everything has been kind of linear. Notice my ship has not been banking or anything like that. So this is something we may want to revisit in the future. But it is, of course, something that we can think about as we start working on our animations. And of course, one last thing to keep in mind is right now this is still recording. If I want to stop that, I can hit end recording. And if I ever choose to come back to it, I can hit start recording, and you see it will simply start up again. So a real quick way to get animation here into our game and start introducing that for our player.